and they're based on
Hmm.
phenology, people watching. Another one is like onions. When you grow onions, if it's a thicker skin, they're there and they already know that they need that to get through the winter. So,
How
it's
does that
woolly,
happen?
right? Or for the woolly caterpillar, is he like, I had a great summer. I just grew like a massively awesome coat. I'm
Look at
gonna find a
me.
super good mate and cozy up, and it's not even gonna be that cold.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Fagan, and my guest today is Carol Connare. She is the current editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. And I was actually thinking about, sort of not seriously, sort of seriously, titling this episode, How Did Amy Get to Interview the Editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac? But that's too many characters and it would not fit well in a title. So we are going with the Old Farmer's Almanac. But anyway, I got to have this really awesome conversation with Carol, who is, I think she said she started this job last year, but she is so knowledgeable and she's just so nice and easy to talk to. So I really enjoyed this, of course, and learned a ton. And I got to ask my questions from a couple of listeners who had questions to ask. So if you asked a question, Jenny and Brenda, I hope that you're listening because she's totally answering your questions. And I find it fascinating that the almanac literally started in, what did she say, 1792? Holy moly. That's so long ago. And we've learned so much, but we still rely on the almanac, which is super cool. But anyway, so I'm going to get to this conversation because Carol's going to talk way better than me. So I hope that you guys enjoy this. Please feel free to share it with somebody that you think would also enjoy it or get something out of it. It helps to get, it helps to get this in front of other listeners. And also we get to learn from the horse's mouth, the almanac itself. And I just could not believe that she is the second woman to hold the role of editor. But there have only been 14 since 1792. But so if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you don't mind, and again, just share it with folks, and don't forget to subscribe if you have not. Subscribe or follow the podcast. But I so appreciate you listening. I know there are so many podcasts and so many things that are demanding of our time. And so the fact that you're here means a lot to me. I hope you have an awesome week. Talk to you soon. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Carol Connare, and you might not recognize her name, but you know where she works. Carol is the 14th editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, which was founded in 1792. She is the second woman editor ever since 1792. But so I'm thrilled to have Carol on here, and we're going to do some fun chats. So, Carol, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having the Old Farmer's Almanac on.
Whoop, whoop. I'm very excited. Everyone knows the Farmer's Almanac, and I'm sure we all have stories. So it's just, I am just so honored to have you here and learn more about how everything works. So the Farmer's Almanac it's more than just like predicting weather.
It
And
is.
it's like a lot more than just predicting weather.
Yeah. Really, we're really for the grower. I think that in all ways, maybe even growers of knowledge, I guess I would say. But, for the farm back when we started in 1792, every other person, frankly, was a farmer. And, people lived on the farms. And so the idea that those same enduring values and qualities and information today are just as important. That's kind of why we're still here. But yeah, it's been a changed audience, but I think we changed some things and not others.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that it's for the growers, it meant a lot more. I mean, it still means a lot to some people that are, nostalgic and people that really go by that. But the farmers were more revered, I think, in that day, because everyone depended on, we all depended on that for food, but and not like pesticides and chemicals and all that other stuff. Like it was just like you have to have everything just right. In my head anyway, like that's how it seems in my head. Like there were more variables because there were less unnatural things.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that wrong?
it's all about food, right? And sustenance. I mean, the idea that, people were growing food to live, that's how it happened. As you said, their farmers were revered because this is how we get by. We may not have to spend our own time growing everything because they're figuring it out. Agriculture was a booming business, because America and Canada, frankly, were really growing so quickly and people needed to eat. But also, there's new kinds of growing tools, ideas, plants, conditions, and so it was really a sharing vehicle. And back when we started, there was many almanacs. The old Farmer's Almanac is the only one that's lasted, but there were many regional ones because it's things like in the old days it was like, what's the cost of a ferry? The agricultural colleges closing so that we know we get our kids back? Things that we might look up on the internet now. But the cost of who our legislators were listed in the almanacs, just basic useful information. So when we started, it was like you had the Bible and then like an almanac, and hopefully the one pertaining to you, something in there.
Right? Oh my gosh. And you were saying before we started recording, the person that started the almanac was an astrologer.
Astronomer.
Astronomer.
Robert B. Thomas. In fact, Robert B. Thomas started in 1792. And back then, the fields of astronomy and astrology had recently separated. And so the astronomers were kind of poo-pooing the astrology. However, that had been a lot of what people had to sort of predict anything for a long time.
Right.
But Robert B. Thomas was an early astronomer and really a sun scientist, and that's what we factor into our long range forecasts. But that was when we think about weather, which is kind of like our bread and butter. It's still something that we all connect over. We can't control it, and it controls us. Like, am I going to bring my rain shoes or my umbrella? Will I be able to plant my crop? I mean, there's many things. Do I need to, set out rain barrels because it's going to be a drought year, or what have you? Is the caterpillar furry? And so all of these things were really important when we didn't actually have a very good way of knowing. And so astronomers at least had the ability to look at planet science and figure out more about the cycles.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you were saying a lot of it is cycle the weather patterns and stuff like that, which is so it's just so fascinating that even with the changes in climate, like it still happens. It's just
That's what's
wild.
amazing. It's amazing. That's what we do. I think as we were discussing that it's about sun science for us. That's the big thing that long range forecasters typically look at beyond climatology, beyond meteorology. It's like that 11-year cycle of sun activity, which we just exited our 25th cycle. And it was incredibly active at the end, which many people saw solar flares, in Aurora Borealis being visible further south. But that cycle really impacts our weather. As I mentioned, it's not like we get a solar flare and we get, a drought. It's much more complicated. Those affect the speed of our jet stream or the waviness of our jet stream, the warmth of our oceans. And those are the things that we see cyclically that happen and then impact the weather. However, climate change has made it so that everything is the new normal they were set for Canada, almost all finished, US 3 years ago, and they go on a 30-year cycle. And so they were recently updated, but our weather predicting team has had to really take those and just even that's the art part and
Yeah.
say it's not enough because the last 5 years have been a real aberration in temperature,
Mm.
and precipitation, like a lot of really heavy precipitation in small amount of times in localized events. Very hard to predict.
Oh, for sure, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
almost impossible.
yeah. Oh my gosh. And so I just want to, so as the editor of the Farmer's Almanac, what what are your responsibilities? I mean, you seem very knowledgeable, which is super cool. And maybe that's just like you are going to be on podcasts and you are going to be the face of the almanac, so you have to know what you're talking about.
No,
But
no.
have you been
Yeah,
involved
that's
in
extra.
that's just it's fascinating to me because that's not it's I mean I'm thrilled that you have all this information and you are just so knowledgeable, but is that really part of the editor's job?
Yeah, I think that, what we find out is that there's new audiences for the Almanac every year. And how do you even use it? I think we're actually going to do our own Zoom podcast on like, how do you read the Almanac? Because there's so much information. We have tables and charts and things.
Super
My
cool.
job is really, we're a team, obviously. We have a number of editors and we have a wonderful designer and we have fact checking and we have almanac.com, which is a really cool website for the Old Farmer's Almanac where you can get tools that correspond. Like you can punch in your zip code and get frost dates, when to plant your peas, our 60-day weather forecast. So it's really, you can look at all of those really fun tools. And again, basically, and sky, what's in the night sky near me by zip code, things to look for planets. And that, so we are a team that does that across both printed matter. We do a bunch of calendars, a moon calendar, a gardening calendar, an engagement calendar. We do, all books. We do veggie gardeners and container gardeners. I'm working on the houseplant book. So no, I don't get to just be the face. I'm a manager of 6 people. And I heard you were in a band. Like if you're in a band, like like that's wrangling cats. Uh, and so we do that, but also it's really about what do we think is relevant? Like it is on me to say, hey, let's get all your best ideas and then let's pick the best 20 stories in addition to our, regular things that we do, which is astronomy, astrology, food, history, all those things. But what do we want to expand in those areas? So it's super fun. And we're always trying to think about like, what will people want to know? It's useful as like our name.
Oh, I was just thinking about that as you were talking, like how do you choose what is going to go in? And I know you said that you've got six people on your team.
Yeah.
Um, but like there's so much information. Like how do you just like this is going to be, I mean, because it's not like a monthly publication. Like this is one a year.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that we do have, 2 million plus people that get this in their hands, and that means probably another 3 or 4 million read it. And they all let us know. So even from the beginning, Robert B. Thomas would always like, we had reader submissions, and we still do. We do have recipes and essays, and I get letters all the time. I get letters from prisoners, from Boy Scouts, from church groups, from recipe sharers, from just people that say, I've been getting the Almanac for 50 years and I love it. And so Amazon, we sell on Amazon. You can see people's comments right there. We really look at that. We really look at that. We really listen. I mean, people send checks to our office for their calendars. Like, these are real people. And if anybody calls us, they get a call back, if they've left a number. It doesn't matter. I've given people like, I'm in the field and what's the best day for sauerkraut? And I'm like, well, we're going to call that guy back because so I just feel like it's real and it takes us all to do it. But to be nitty gritty, like this year, there's a story called Snug as a Bug and a Hug. And I think I saw a story about like bugs hugging. And then I was like, that just could be a fun title. And then we were all like, people don't remember how to hug after the pandemic. And like, is it okay? And then that sort of rolls, right? And it's like, what are we all feeling? Is there something we could tap into there? So it's a fun story, but it's also kind of like, if you spend 20 seconds hugging someone, your cortisol level drops. And just try it. It happens. It works perfectly.
I love that that's so, you guys are really so involved that you would, I mean, the communication, that's so great. That, I mean, that after all these years, people write in and they're like, I miss this, or I really love this, or, here are some options. And you guys like, I mean, literally, what's the best day for sauerkraut? And you call him.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Who does that these days?
Right. I know. Who has a live person on the other end? So that really does set us apart. And it's a real point of pride for us. We have a thing called Zendesk, which is just emails that come in and we share them across the staff. And there's no better way for me to communicate to people that managing creative people is like, it's not really managing, it's something else. But to keep them in touch with our readers, I'd have it's just fantastic that they have to answer like, my hydrangea that my grandmother planted died. Like, what do I do? Why is my magnolia not yellow anymore? We often have to research those answers for ourselves. And that's what we do.
That's so cool.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Different.
I had no idea. I had no idea. And so to that point, I was telling you that I reached out to some friends and listeners, and I was like, I am going to be talking to the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. Does anyone have questions that I should ask? I've got her attention. And so my friend Jenny Boghun, who is a guest on the podcast twice, she is the biggest fan of the Almanac, and she wanted to know about goldenrod. And this is something, I mean, these are things that are, she's a homesteader, and so she really focuses on a lot of stuff more than I do. But she said, does an abundance of goldenrod mean anything? She said she had heard that the first sign of goldenrod means like 6 weeks till the first frost. Does that sound legit to you?
Yes, phenology, like what's coming out when and what does that mean? I mean, that's what goldenrod symbolizes for us. It would be more like, well, goldenrod in general is a wonderful native. I mean, until it became, not as fancy as something else. That's what we had. And I don't know, I have a ton I have this kind of permaculture orchard, small yard, and the pollinators this time of year have usually fewer things and they love the goldenrod, right? So I mean, it's kind of their last blast for things, which is great. I would say it's a sign of health, just generally. For me, it's also the time when ragweed comes out. And so I always say, oh, the goldenrod's out, I'm allergic. And what I really mean is it's the ragweed. And so in terms of what it means, sure, like to me, it was kind of right on time this year where I am in New Hampshire. But that's kind of the thing that we're looking for with climate change is goldenrod expanding
Mm.
its reach? Is it popping up earlier? Because with these things, it's kind of like if that's food for a certain animal or insect or habitat, and it comes earlier because it's warmer or later because it's warmer, did that being not get what it needs because it was on a different time schedule? So a lot is interconnected. So for your friend Jenny, I would just say like good news. Natives are happy where you are. B, is it coming up around the same time as it does? That's a good sign. Yes, it indicates that fall is coming. We're going to get a frost in probably a month, you know.
Right. Okay. I think it's fascinating to me. Well, it's not fascinating. I am so bad about like I have no sense of like something happened last year. I mean, something happened last
Yeah,
year. When?
right.
Got me. I have no idea. Is it on time for something? I have no idea. What happened a year ago? I don't know. What did I have for breakfast? But so the people that keep track of stuff like that is just it's mind-blowing to me and it's so cool. Um
Those are the growers. Those are the growers. They know.
right?
Well, they know what they can grow that they couldn't used to. Like for New Hampshire, for instance, like people are like, we're going to be able to grow peaches. It's been Massachusetts is the northernmost in our area, and
Oh, I have a friend in Wisconsin, in Woolwich that grows peaches. She's got a peach tree
coastal,
right
right?
down.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be like it was too risky, you
Hmm.
know. Home growers might try it because you might get a crop every few years, but it's like now people are like, well, it could be commercial, right?
Yep. Jenny also was wondering about caterpillars, if it means anything that they're extra fuzzy. And is that a thing?
Yeah, it is. It is. It sort of means like, are they preparing for a colder winter, right? Are we going to have that? And actually, we're not. We're predicting a milder winter. But
Uh,
it's not again a direct connection. Like you could look at folklore and these things, which are really, really interesting because again, they're based on
hmm.
technology, people watching. Another one is like onions. When you grow onions, if it's a thicker skin, they're there and they already know that they need that to get through the winter. So,
How
it's
does that
woolly,
happen?
right? Or for the woolly caterpillar, is he like, I had a great summer. I just grew like a massively awesome coat. I'm
Look at
gonna find a
me.
super good mate and cozy up, and it's not even gonna be that cold.
They're gonna
No,
be
but there
they're
are
gonna be
things
hot.
connected to
They're
that.
gonna be hot this winter.
Yes, they are.
Sorry, buddy, you planned wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they're extra fuzzy, that means that they're getting ready for winter. So like putting on their winter coat, like cats do, and
I would have to look it up because last year we were laughing in our office because we were like, let's take a video of the caterpillar. We had a really cute woolly caterpillar across the cover of the almanac. And we were like, well, what does it mean? What does it mean? If it's extra woolly or this and that. And it's like you can find either way. So that's what I would say. It's like I think that the proverbs do connect to things, but they're also people were always still trying to just connect it no matter what.
mm,
So never came
funny.
down on the side of that. We were like, okay, let's not show the video of the caterpillar on the cover because we're
Make
like,
what
we
you
can't
want of this.
it's not matching with our prediction.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's really cool. I love that, there are some things that we just don't know. And that's
Well, last year
we
we
can't
predicted
predict.
a mild winter as well. And we were like, well, that caterpillar, they're not catching on. They
Mhm.
did not get the memo.
Oh, whoopsie. Uh, and then so my friend Brenda Simmons had also asked, since we're talking about people writing in, Brenda Simmons asked, how are predictions always so accurate? How does that
Well,
happen?
well, how does that happen?
How indeed?
Thank you, Brenda. I would say, first of all, in every issue, we also assess ourselves and we say, how do we do? So we are not always that accurate, though, as we mentioned, like short range meteorology is like 50-50 at best. It seems to be getting a little better.
Really?
I don't know. I feel like I can depend on maybe 4 days. or so.
Okay.
But yeah, how are we? So it's really based on sun science. It's on this cycle, as well as this idea that what do we also know? We are looking at data, massive data over time.
Right.
And you know, in another year 8 of the sun cycle that has similar characteristics, what were the other, we call them telecommunications, like the fancy word is like oscillations, but El Nino or El Nina, these are products of oceans and jet streams and all sorts of things. But we can look at those because there's data connected to them, and that's what we do. We really look for those patterns, and then over time, we've been seeing other patterns like the prairies, Canadian prairies and our prairies that are kind of connected in the middle of the country. There's been this kind of longer winter and then a longer fall, like we call it the hangover. It's kind of like the hangover in spring and the hangover in fall, which is a pattern that's more recent, right? So,
I'm mad
but
at that. I don't hate spring or fall.
I know they don't
It'll
either,
be
right? So
longer.
it's not bad for the prairies as long as, and they actually are very drought tolerant. Like they have a lot of, so it's like, yeah, but that idea that those farmers are already seeing that, we're saying it as well, but if you were on the ground, you'd see that. And that's been more of like a recent phenomenon. So how do we factor that in? And that's, we have a weather team that does that.
Mm. Do let's see. How am I going to put my thoughts together? Do farmers write in and say, I'm seeing this pattern? Is there like is it mainly sun science, or is it like people noticing changes and stuff like that? How does that is
It
like
is really
phenomenal.
science. It's really a formula. And then other factors are weighed in. Do people write to us about that? Sure. We hear when you're like, you got it completely wrong, for our zip code for sure. And where they were, especially they can be devastating, these extreme events that are localized. And so, those we don't really predict. We are more like, okay, storms and temperatures and precipitation. And that's based on data. But, even when I look through, we're always on the radio with people this time of year and talking about the weather forecast. When you talk about an area, and so many of them, we have this little graph at the bottom of each weather region, and it will be precipitation and temperature for each month, up or down.
Wow.
And we're talking about 5 degrees above normal, 5 inches of precipitation above normal in a single month. That's a lot. Uh, so we are seeing those trends, we pick up on those trends year to year. And we do hear from people when we're not right. And we do hear from them when we're right as well.
Oh, I just wonder if part of the input for predictions are like if people are, farmers are saying, we've had this for the last 3 years, like is this going to be a trend or something like that? Is that something that happens, or do you use that input, or is that it's just like they're noticing it because it's part of the pattern?
I would say that doesn't factor into our predictions, but that does into our stories. Like we always profile, I don't know, more than a dozen farmers in a bigger way. And, we're talking about generational change on farms.
Mm.
And so a lot of young people are coming back to farms, which is exciting, but they're doing it with new technologies, or they're diversifying. Like we're going to throw in different kinds of crops or livestock, or we're going to do it in more sustainable fashion, or we're going to go direct to consumer as well, or even have an agritourismo, like many different ways. But they've seen the cycles on their farm. And so what we get from them is more like, we want heirloom varieties and native things, and we're planting pollinator crops alongside our monoculture. We're looking at mycorrhizal fungi, we're looking at much more of these sustainable ways, which the Almanac has, advocated for, I don't know, 233 years. So, we hear from them, but it's kind of like this idea that that's more important than ever,
Mm.
is the resiliency of varieties and strains. And so what are those, right? And so like that's really the message that we hear is we have to dial in on our types of things we're growing, diversify even the wheat kind of crops or say what have you. So that's more the message we're hearing because of what they
Mhm.
see in the weather.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And then so, some of the, I know that I was telling you that I have gotten a couple of recipes from an almanac. I don't remember how long ago. I've had it for many years, but I love that they're because it's for the growers. It's geared toward the growers. So people would send in their recipes. And so you were telling me that people send in recipes and you try them.
Yes. Well, we have a recipe contest every year in both the Almanac, the Old Farmer's Almanac, and the Old Farmer's Almanac Garden Guide, which comes out in February. We do recipes in there as well. I think that tomatoes is the one for 2026. So if people have good tomato recipes for the Almanac, I think we're doing spinach in the Garden Guide. So yes, we get. Ooh, this year we must have had 300 submissions. So we don't cook all those. We go through and we get down to about 15, 20.
The most
And
interesting sounding ones.
yeah, and like this year was holiday recipes, so we really want to span the most amount of holidays. We look for geographic distribution, creativity, and yeah, things like, there's a sauerkraut on there because like people grow food, right? They grow cabbages and stuff. And so yes, then we taste them. So people on staff volunteer and then we all
I
gather.
bet they do.
Yeah, they volunteer. They get paid for their ingredients, which is nice, and we reimburse them. And then it's brutal. Like, you wouldn't want to be in the room if you had one of your recipes in there. That's like, nah, but this is awesome. And so we always find wonderful recipes. In fact, it's hard to choose because they're all usually really good. We often find that, like, when maybe, recipes you have, like, the first time you make it isn't always the best, and then the next time's better. So I always feel for that because I'm like, yeah, we need the home cook to succeed on these recipes. We want them to be that. So we kind of work with that. So sometimes, things won't come out perfectly, but we're like, that's a great recipe. And if we can just kind of let people know exactly how to make it, it'll be great.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, I would love to be there for one of those.
Yeah, this year we had so the winner was strawberry blueberry cheesecake bars. So like a 4th of July thing. Uh my favorite was more of a fall. It was it's like a kind of custard cake pumpkin squash thing with cranberry crumble on top. There was goat cheese. Oh, maybe that was the winner, the goat cheese tartlets. Oof, with arugula and cranberry on it,
Oh gosh. Arugula and
right?
cranberry?
And then there was
Mm.
caramel popcorn. And then
Yeah, there was.
there was like a holiday sauerkraut.
Jenny is a big sauerkraut person. She'll do loads of sauerkraut, and then she has people over to celebrate.
This one had bacon. That's what made it holiday. It was like, you can't miss with that.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
So what are other sections of the almanac? So you've got recipes and weather, obviously.
Yes, we always do astronomy. And again, I think, in a way it's like fun to think about what connects with the weather. Like you need a good clear sky to see planets and stars. So that's always been a big one for us, obviously growing, but kind of probably one of the last places that does folklore. We do home remedies because that's what we do and they still work. Like, this year we did a story on tea, which many new studies are finding it's just incredible. We already know it's good for us, right? But like literally in the past few years, they're finding how even more good it is for us. Every time I read that story through editing, I just went and made a cup of tea. I was like, okay, I'm convinced. So,
If you
you
say
know,
so.
and home remedies should be simple like that. Like it's not going to break the bank. It's actually something I have in my cupboard.
Right.
Um, we still do history. We do husbandry. We do farming. We do amusements. Ooh, just some of my favorite things. Advice. We're willing to give you advice.
I love that. Oh gosh, I love the history stuff too because it's just, there's just there's just something about, especially a publication that's been around for so long. Like clearly some stuff has happened in the last 233 years. And just to just connect it all together. I love that.
Well, next year is our sesquicentennial. It's our 250th as a country.
Sesquicentennial?
Sesquicentennial is also called semi-quincentennial. There's two words for it, and they're both horrible. Sesquicentennial is the one I can remember
Tongue
more.
twisters.
I know.
Oh my
And that's
God.
been fun. We're thinking about that. Like what has stuck around for 250 years?
Oh yeah.
Quite a few things.
I think it would be fun to do like a reel or something with a bunch of people trying to say those words
Oh, I'm writing that
just
down.
to celebrate the sets. What am I saying? Can you spell it? I just that would be
Sestr. I always think like a sister, so sester
the
centennial. So it's like the mid. I know.
oh my
Ah,
gosh, that would be really funny. Um, yeah, there's just so I think it's so the almanac is such a huge part of, the US, of course, but like do you do is it worldwide or is it just the
no, we do
US?
Canadian edition. Here, the Canadian. It's like nice and red. And then
Oh,
we do we do several versions of the US. We do a hardcover, we do, bookstore version with the whole, two versions with the whole. And the Canadian edition is all formatted for Canada, like the tides and the weather, and even in Quebec we do that in French. And we have several stories that are Canadian only, though as the new editor, I feel like there's many things that we share with Canada that we could do stories that really touch us both. I mean, many obviously they do. We're all humans in North America, so there's that. But thinking more about the things that unify us and bring us together versus Canada versus
right.
US. So in this issue, I really love the story. We have the Canadian roots of baseball, which I can't believe I haven't had any more like mean mail about that.
I mean, I guess there's the Toronto Blue Jays, right?
Yes, and
That's the
actually
only
Babe
thing I
Ruth.
know about baseball.
I'm not a great baseball person either, but the first recorded game of baseball happened in Ontario in 18, if I'll get this right, 53 or was it? And so it really was. And then also things like Babe Ruth hit his first home run in Canada. He was in like a premier, like a pre-league. And the guy who invented the outfielder's glove was Canadian, right?
Who knew?
They practically own it. They practically own baseball right there.
I just know about the Toronto Blue Jays because my sister used to live in Florida and they used to go practice right like near across the street from her practically. Um, and I don't know anything about sports, but that's really cool. That's really cool. I mean, who I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, we try to entertain.
But that's cool. I mean, we're neighbors. We're not like that far away.
It's not. You can drive there now. You can get in again.
Cool. I want to look into that more. That's really cool. I mean, not necessarily a baseball thing, but
Like in the Canadian, so all your US fans, if you have to get the Canadian edition, the special story this year, there's two. One is the Comeback Cows, which is about breeds of cows in Canada that came up as Canadian breeds that were endangered and now are thriving or coming back. And again, it's this story of resilience and sustainability. They're heritage breeds who can be used for milk, for plowing, for meat,
hmm.
uh, triple threat, they call them. And, they're probably resistant to hoof disease, they're drought, and, they can withstand drought because they have these old genetics, and so they're coming back. And then there's another story about this moon mist ice cream, which we couldn't find any to taste. It's a maritime thing, and it's banana, blueberry, and grape, and it like looks
Mm.
like the disco of the 80s. It's like the color's crazy.
Banana, blueberry, and grape.
Yeah.
I'd try that.
Ouch. Yeah.
That's fun. Oh my God.
Yeah. So
So what are
Canada
the
only.
whoop, Canada? You got the winner one. What are the big stories in the US then?
Well, the snug is a bug and a hug.
Right?
That's a good one. We have a story about avalanches, which is not exactly a cheerful. I mean, it's a story that's so interesting about the science of them. They are becoming a little more prevalent due to climate change because it's about like this faceted snow, like when you get a big snowfall and then you get a rain or a melt and then you get, a freezing. So that's kind of those variable things lead to a weak snowpack. So just kind of talking about the science of avalanches and of course a whole safety thing about, when you're in that country, there's lots of ways to stay informed about them. But yeah, this idea that weather, right? Weather is just so incredible. It's again this thing we can't control. We're at the whim of it, but what else can we know about it? So
Hmm.
that's a good one.
Wow. Um, yeah, that sounds like, I mean, that's Maine weather lately.
Right. And so,
Snow and
in the
then rain.
mountains, you might not think of avalanches like we think of it more in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, probably than Maine, but who's to say with that kind of more snow warming, that sort of idea. But on a happier note, there's the story I get asked a lot about in this issue is cats. We do like cat behaviors explained. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. That's a good one.
And if
Right.
that and that's I mean cats are run by the moon, right? Ooh, my cats get crazy
Well,
on the
or
moon.
they run the moon. I'm not
Ooh,
sure.
one or the other, but they're connected.
They're
Uh,
definitely connected.
Holy moly. Yeah, my cat was off the chain the other day with the new moon.
Yeah, the new moon.
That
The
was a
cat.
rough one.
No.
Oh boy. But that's really fun. I love the variety of stories even. And I love that you're trying unifying the US and Canada. That's fun.
Yeah, right.
Very noble.
We have more in common than we have that is not.
Yeah.
So, you know, I I think it's okay to say this. It's like, we always wonder about a political hot potato. We definitely are not trying to, we just want to be helpful, really. But, I was thinking about Canada and, there's still one of the oldest professions in Canada that still exists is trapping and fur. And I know that a lot of people don't like that, and then they're against that, and I get that. And I don't really have an opinion on it. I was just so curious when I was looking up statistics that there's something like 50,000 trappers or farmers, in Canada, and it's like we sort of forget, about this thing, but that's probably been a continual occupation since the 1600s, I'm guessing. I mean, that's what people went to Canada for,
You
to
said
trap.
that's the largest or the longest?
I wonder if it's I mean, I think people settled Canada, they'd settled it and they were trappers and they were loggers. And so I was thinking about that. My family, was founded by 9 generations ago, a woman who came from Paris as one of the women, the women, fillies of the king, the girls of the king, and so they came to marry people in Canada to settle Canada. And I don't remember if our ancestor was a trapper or a logger, but they were one or the other. And
Yeah.
but yet those two professions are still very much around.
For sure. I'm trying to remember what my family did because my family came to Canada as well.
Yeah, and I was thinking about another fun story. It's like we always think about Ellis Island, but there's two islands in Canada where a lot of people came through, and I thought that would be an interesting story as well.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yes, it would.
right. Those islands of hope. Like we all kind of came, those of us who aren't native to this land, we pretty much came up via an island.
Wow.
All cases.
So Carol, you had kind of tipped off that this winter coming up is going to be on the milder side, and
It
this is
is.
everywhere in the U.S.
But yeah, wasn't aware that you were now in Virginia. And so for parts of Virginia, we're actually
Snow.
one of the few places in the country that's going to have a little snow, is what we're saying. We're saying for New Englanders, mild and dry. There will be cold snaps. People will be able to make snow for all those people that love snow. I love snow. But yeah, it's a very, and it's also small amounts in Canada as well. So like North America, we're just sort of seeing a few places in the middle of the country
Hmm.
where we're
So
going to say there will
cool.
be snow cover. Yeah.
Wow. All right, everyone, you heard it here first.
You'll
Unless
just,
you are, unless you already have your almanac.
right.
Well, so what is your favorite thing about working for the Almanac?
Oh, that's such a good question. I really do love hearing from our readers. Like
Yeah.
you can't, you can't buy that. Like that's just, uh, to know what you're doing every day is touching people, I think is incredibly good. Um, the staff's amazing. So it's just so fun. I worked at Yankee Publishing 23 years ago on the Yankee magazine side. And so I'm what's called a boomerang. I came back for my dream job. I love all of our subject areas. It's been super fun to dig into things like home remedies, just really fun. Um, I think there's a lot of room for that in our thinking today, especially with our healthcare system. And so maybe depending on the old ways is good. As I mentioned, I'm a vegetable gardener, a flower gardener, but I just moved back and bought a permaculture orchard. So I feel like that idea, like I'm always learning, and I learn from the staff and from the old issues. Like literally, I can find out about fruits in my yard from 1830 Almanac. So
Yeah.
that sense of history, of continuity. So about a million things. Then, of course, the recipe testing day is really good.
Okay. That's awesome. I mean, I think that it's so cool that people that are involved in the earth and growing food and stuff like that, and people that care about so many different areas that they all include weather and and the patterns and stuff like that. And so to be able to plan makes such a difference.
Hmm.
That you can plan your garden, you can plan what you're growing, you can plan, you can just plan stuff around the patterns that have come. And thank goodness for you guys to keep track of that because nobody wants me in charge of that. That's for sure. But so thank you for doing that. And so I do want to know, I ask everybody, Carol, what does the word sustainability mean to you?
It's a powerful word, really, isn't it nowadays? And so thanks for asking. And I think it means a lot of things, but some just simple ideas like in my work, I feel like we have a sustainable publication. We're the oldest published periodical continuously in North America, which is
Amazing.
sustainable. And, we support a small, wonderful staff, and we do so ecologically. We bought and installed a solar farm so that Yankee is almost completely powered by solar. So I think in the workplace, it means a lot to me that we are invested in those things um, that reduce our footprint. And then in my own life, I think it's been about food, and the idea that what we all know, like a third to 40% of our food normally goes into the waste stream. That's not in my case. I do have a worm composting and I have a compost, and I just met my new mail lady who has pigs, and she said any of my drops she would take for her pigs. So I leave a bucket when she gets my mail, she gets the fruit. And so I think if all of us are just kind of more open to sustainability as a concept, I guess when you first broach that question, like I'm going to ask you, I feel like it's loaded sometimes because people also say, I can't, like I'm in a dorm, or I live in a city and I don't know what to do. But I just heard a story today that those prepared meal kits are so less about putting waste that it even offsets the packaging, which we feel is horrible. But this idea that I don't even know the names of, like, a packaged meal is reducing the waste of food in the system. That and those things are hopeful, and I feel like, okay, so people do have choices.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's a personal word. Um,
Absolutely.
and that people should feel empowered about very simple choices being sustainable. You can't change everything all the time, but one great choice or one attempt, or change in your life, goes so far. Um, we were taught for a long time that we didn't need to do that. The Almanac is not that old. Those ideas aren't that old, but when you read that, anything about it is about sustainability. There's no pesticides, there's no monoculture. It's about those enduring principles. It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
this.
I love the idea of letting it be simple and being okay with that, because that is, there are so many ways to just like um super expensive and ornate and like have everything be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be, simple is fine.
Simple's fine.
I mean, in my move, like my life is very quiet. And that's, it's okay that it's simple. It's, it's just me and the pets, and we're growing our food forest a little bit at a time, and it's not very active, but I was thinking about that this morning. Like my life is it's very slow. Like I'm not rushing in the morning, which I'm cool with. I love that. And
Ah,
just do my thing, and do what I can for in the sustainability realm. So like recycling and composting and all this stuff. It's like it doesn't have to be pressured. It doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be so many things. It just has to be, your thing. Just do your thing.
yeah, I think that's so true. Like one move. When I moved recently, I just made a commitment, like nothing, I gotta not put anything in the landfill. And it took a long time to find homes for everything. It took a lot of trips to places. It took a lot of meeting people where they were at. And I really enjoyed that part of it, and giving things away for free. And at the end, it's a lot of effort, but man, I felt really good that I didn't put much in the landfill.
Well, and think about all the connections that you made in doing that too.
I made
Making
people
that
happy and they made me
neighbors,
happy.
right? Well, I
That's,
mean,
that's pretty good.
that circular economy thing where your mail lady will,
Mhm.
feed her pigs with your drops, and you don't have to worry about that. It's just it's beautiful.
Yeah, be open.
And
I think the sustainability thing is like be open to the smallest things that can actually just be so helpful, and
yeah,
yeah, keep it in the system.
totally. And I talk about worm compost a lot, especially, and I try to encourage it a lot because you could do that in the city. You could do that in an apartment.
Exactly.
You can do that anywhere. I left mine in Maine. I'm super bummed, but I'll start another one.
Yeah, you will.
Um, anyway, what is the best way to find the Farmer's Almanac?
Sure. Yeah. We should be in all stores like right now. My boss is
Getting
amazing.
ready for.
She handles the distribution, and it's incredible because we're in grocery stores, we're in hardware stores, we're in Tractor Supply, we're in, Walmart. We are on Amazon. Last year we went to #1 in our category. So we love when people buy it on Amazon because that unfortunately drives a lot of what
Because
we
then you
do. But
get that stat, right?
yeah.
Seller.
Almanac.com, like I said, is a really great site, and you can buy any of our products there. There's a whole store. So there's a nice, like, easy to read version there, which is great for some people. It's a little bit brighter and bigger. Um,
I totally
yeah,
wrote that down in the beginning. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm psyched about the tools.
yeah, there's some fun stuff on there. The mop is the best seller. Like, after the Almanac. And there's also like Vern's weed spinner, which is like you put it on your screw gun and it'll spin the weeds right out of your yard. That
Oh
thing's
my
great.
gosh, that's fantastic. All right. So almanac.com, go to any store, Amazon. Um, and I know that you're on Instagram because that's how I
Yeah.
found you guys.
Hey, all right.
So Instagram at Old Farmer's Almanac, I believe.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, Carol, thank you so much for spending time with me and sharing all this. This is huge. It's like one of the most exciting episodes I've ever done. You're kind of a big deal. 233 years.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you're the second woman editor. Second of many, hopefully, unless you stick around for a long time.
I think they really want you to stay for a while. It's only been 14 and 233 years, so
That's something. I read that and I was like,
sign up for a while.
how do were they without an editor for a while?
Our first editor, Robert B., was something like 48 years, and then my predecessor was 23.
Oh,
2 or 23, yeah. So
wow.
it's a good job.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you again. I'm thrilled to get to meet you and talk to you and learn all about these cool things and share the fact that it's going to be a mild winter. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but except for in Virginia. Who knew? I moved to winter. It was not winter when I moved, that's for sure. But and I was told that I'm being sent an almanac or two that I can give away. So I'm going to have a little giveaway, you guys. And this is for the 2025 edition. So, Carol, thank you again. I'm so looking forward to this airing, and I am just so thrilled that you were here.
It was lovely to meet you, Amy.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me sickness will heal the ache with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here now I'm so far down, and mercy's bound to find me.
But anyway, I got to have this really awesome conversation with Carol, who is, I think she said she started this
When
job
that
last year, but
state
she's
of
so
grace
knowledgeable, and she's just so nice and
is
easy to talk
finally
to.
found.
So I really enjoyed this, of course, and
Will there be
learned a
music?
ton.
Ooh, and
And I
good
got to ask
friends
my questions
around
from a
me.
couple of listeners who
And I'll just smile
you asked a question, Jenny
happy
and
tears
Brenda, I hope that you're listening, because
and wonder, how did I get there from here? I wonder, how did I get there from here?
So much, but we still rely on the Almanac, which is super cool. But anyway, so
Somebody tell me, show me the direction. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, yeah, yeah. How do I get there?
to get this in front of other listeners, and also we get to learn from the horse's mouth, the Almanac itself. And I just could not believe that she is the second woman to hold the role of editor, but there have only been 14 since 1792. But so if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you don't mind, and again, just share it with folks, and don't forget to subscribe if you have not. Subscribe or follow the podcast. But I so appreciate you listening. I know there are so many podcasts and so many things that are demanding of our time, and so the fact that you're here means a lot to me. I hope you have an awesome week. Talk to you soon.